G'day and welcome to another episode of Ian Smissen's Photography. So this is something a little bit different today. This is a lap of Anglesey in a day. We're going to stop at 4 or 5 locations, maybe more, depending on how time goes. And really, we're just sightseeing. So I'm going to try and grab some photographs along the way. It's now just before 10 o'clock in the morning. Leisurely breakfast, as you do when you're on holidays. There was no frantic get up at 5 in the morning and rush out to get a sunrise shot, as I would normally do if I was just here for landscape photography. But I'm here with my wife on a holiday. And one of the challenges you have when you're on holidays is trying to fit in a few photography shoots. It's quite bright and harsh light, much brighter and harsher than I would normally shoot in. But when you're on holidays, you just have to take what you get. So I'm down here at the first stop in Manfrotto, and apologies to my Welsh friends and colleagues for my pronunciation of place names as we go around today. I'm just down in front of the Lifeboats Visitor Centre on this beautiful rocky shore. The tide is almost in, so there's not a lot of exposed rock or beach to shoot at. But I'm going to have a little wander around and see what I can find to shoot, take a couple of shots, and then move on to the next spot. So the first thing that grabs me here is this nice curved rocky shore with the brown seaweed outlining the line between the water and the rocks, and the slopes of the lifeboat ramp, the old rock ramp, and that headland out there. It's not the most picturesque spot, but I think I can make a sort of postcard shot of this. But then what I'm interested in is shooting a close-up of these rocks and weeds and the waves washing across them, and varying the shutter speed to get that wash across the rocks. Okay, a quick test shot there shows me that I'm overexposed in the sky in comparison with the darker rocks and the deeper green sea in the foreground. So I'm going to put a polarizer on first to cut the glare out, and then secondly I'm going to put a graduated neutral density filter over the top to drop the exposure in the sky and that thin band of sea that's reflecting the white clouds, and then take another shot and then try and work out an appropriate shutter speed that will give me the right amount of blur of water for this first establishing shot with the lifeboat centre as the focus of in the top left corner and the curve of the rocks. Then I'm going to focus in more closely on the rocks on the shore. I quite like that, and I'll show you what I'm looking at through the camera here. You can see the white water splashing up on the rocks here and the curve of the algae on the shore leading your eye to the lifeboat centre with the ramps and then the headlands further out to the right. I don't think there's much more I can do with that shot, except for wait for just the right moment to get the right amount of white water and wash on these rocks and algae. So I'm going to take a few shots to get that right, and then focus in on the rocks in the foreground. Okay, I quite like this little spot right here with a little pool in here with swirling water as the waves wash over it. The tide is still coming in, so if I'm not careful, that's going to disappear in a few minutes under the water, and I'm going to miss the wave action. So I'm going to take some shots of that, and then I think that'll do for here. All right, a quick test shot to get the composition right. I'm shooting at ISO 100 f11, which gives me a shutter speed of about 1/25 of a second, and I'm just going to turn the polarizer around to get the maximum polarization I can get to take the glare off the surface, drop the shutter speed a little bit. That's about 1/20 of a second. That's not going to be fast enough for me to get to blur that water. So I'm going to put a 3-stop neutral density filter on and try again. Well, that's taken me down to about between 0.3 and 0.4 of a second. Now I just have to wait for the right amount of wave action to give me that blurring motion. And one of the hints, and I think I've spoken about it before, when you're trying to shoot this sort of blurry motion right on the shore, the blur as the water washes back off the surface is often more pleasing to the eye than the wash up the rocks. So now it's just wait for a wave, and here comes one. And wait for the wash backwards. Here we go. That's not bad. One more. Wait for another wave. And as I suspected, I think that little pool is just about filled up now. The tide comes in quickly here. One more wave. And I think that's got it. So, on to stop number 2. Well, a quick stop at Bull Bay on the north coast of Anglesey while my wife looks for dolphins. I don't hold out much hope, but I've spotted these lovely cliffs down here, and you can see from this shot that they're a fair way from here, but there's no way of getting closer to them and get that angle where you get the series of cliffs pointing, the fingers of them pointing out into the sea further down the road. There's a lot of scrubby plants in the foreground here, so I'm going to try and get up as high as I can with a telephoto lens and just crop in to shoot those fingers of grey-green rocks with the yellow lichen and algae on them pointing out into that green sea. We'll see what we come up with. It might be meh. It might be okay. Well, I said I wanted to get up high, so I got the tripod fully extended, and way up the top I've got the LCD screen tilted down so I can see out over here. So I'm using automatic focus and the remote release. I don't need the remote release at 100th of a second, but I need it because I can't reach the camera. So those shots look okay at 100th of a second, f11, ISO 100, but in order to make this more interesting, I'm going to put a neutral density filter on and blur the water out. So it's just going to be about colour and pattern and shape. So I'll give that a go. I'm going to have to pull the tripod down and then put it back up again once I've got the filter on. So that's it from here. On to the next stop. Well, here we are at, I think it's called Smissen Bay. And again, apologies for my lack of Welsh pronunciation. This is allegedly the most northerly village in Wales, and it's a pretty little cove with a fishing harbour up here and a lovely sandy beach with a rocky reef, some beautiful seaweed on it, and an interesting sculpture on the beach, a tide bell. Now I'm going to go and have a closer look at that. And that bell's stuck up on a rock, and it might make an interesting shot looking straight out to sea with the rock pointing out there as well, but we'll have to look for some compositions when we get there. In the meantime, I'm just going to walk along the beach wall here and see what there is to see. So just a setting shot on the harbour, just standing up among the rocks so that I've got some foreground interest here. The light's not great because the sun's quite high in the sky, but it's a little bit hazy, which is taking some of the contrast out, so that's quite good. So I'll just see what I can do with this shot, but really this is just a setting shot of the village and the harbour so that we know where we are. Might make an interesting shot with the bell dead centre and the different coloured rocks and weed around it and the white water washing in behind. I'll set up and have a look and see what I can find.